pandas that need veterinary care. But even so, Brian Mittendorf at Ohio State University says most nonprofit zoos and museums hobbled through.
They did better than the worst case scenario that many of us envisioned. And part of that is because other forms of revenues help keep things afloat.
Revenue like donations, investment returns, and grants. And now, ticket sales again. I'm Amanda Peacher for Marketplace.
Our producers are Meredith Gerritsen, Stephen Ryan, Daniel Shin, and Erica Soderstrom, and I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Storm season is here, and JEA is doing everything possible to prepare. And you can too, by updating your contact information and signing up for alerts. You can stay up to date on power restoration efforts. Update your contact info today at JEA.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Distracted driving is deadly. Teens? Yes, but adults too. And there are millions more adults than teens. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud sponsor of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
COVID cases are spiking in Florida once again. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, Jacksonville City Councilwoman Jacoby Pittman has been hospitalized with COVID-19. A closer look at the Delta variant and how it's affecting the increase in cases. That's ahead. Then later.
Different parts of a city even can be experiencing really different heat because of urban planning and urban design things like trees and tree canopy and shade cover.
As extreme heat blankets much of the country, a closer look at why shade is not a relief for every neighborhood in most cities. Plus, photographer Doug Ang and a closer look at the latest to improve the Jacksonville riverfront. All ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Giles Snyder. The ongoing rescue efforts at that collapsed condo in South Florida is being complicated by Tropical Storm Elsa. The storm is on a path that would mostly spare South Florida, but heavy rain is expected in Surfside today. NPR's Adrian Florido says the conditions have slowed, but not stopped the search for victims.
Because of the weather, rescuers have had to stop the search periodically over the last day or so, especially when there's lightning. But yesterday, Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava said that each time that's happened, they've gotten back out there as soon as it is safe.
The death toll has climbed to 28. 4 more bodies were discovered after Sunday night's demolition of the remaining portion of the building. Another 117 remain unaccounted for. The investigative journalist who won a Pulitzer Prize for her work on the New York Times 1619 Project has decided not to teach at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill following a fight over tenure. Nicole Hannah-Jones told CBS this morning that she instead plans to join the journalism faculty at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Japan's deputy prime minister says the country must join the United States in defense of Taiwan if the island is attacked. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Seoul. The remarks drew a prompt rebuke from Beijing, which has threatened to reunite with the island by force if necessary.
The Kyodo news agency quotes Deputy Prime Minister Taro Aso, who doubles as Japan's finance minister, as saying an invasion of Taiwan could threaten Japan's survival. Japan's constitution limits the use of its military overseas, but legislation passed in 2015 allows it to defend itself and its allies in case of existential threats. Aso is the most senior official to make such remarks. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian told a press briefing that Aso's comments had harmed the political foundation of ties between Tokyo and Beijing. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
A setback for Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Israel's parliament has failed to extend a law that prevents Arab Israelis who marry Palestinians from the West Bank or Gaza from extending citizenship to their spouses. NPR's Fatma Tanis reports.
Following an all-night debate, the Knesset Knesset voted 59 to 59 against extending the citizenship and entry into Israel law. Several members of Prime Minister Bennett's coalition voted alongside opposition groups against the extension. Former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party also voted against extending the law in order to embarrass the new government, despite supporting the law in principle. This law was enacted in 2003 at the height of the Second Intifada and has been extended each year. Critics have called it a cruel and racist law aimed at restricting the growth of the Arab Israeli population, while supporters say it's a necessary measure to maintain national security.
This is NPR News.
And the time is 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ponte Vedra Beach is the site of an upcoming assessment of coastal storm damage and risk by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. As WJCT News' Brendan Rivers reports, the Corps wants to hear feedback from St. Johns County residents.
Flooding and coastal erosion are serious concerns in Ponte Vedra Beach, threats that are only expected to worsen as sea levels rise and the climate continues to change. St. Johns County is asking the Corps to evaluate ways it can lessen storm-related risks on its coasts over the next 50 years. The Corps is putting together what's called a Coastal Storm Risk Management Feasibility Study. But first, it'll host 2 online public meetings about the study next Thursday, July 15th. The Corps will present plans for the study and then take questions and comments during the meetings. Brendan Rivers, WJCT News 89.9.
U.S. Congressman and Jacksonville Republican John Rutherford has a new Democratic challenger to his reelection in 2022. St. John's resident Al Robertson has filed to run against Rutherford for Florida's 4th Congressional District, which leans heavily Republican. Robertson is the only Democrat officially in the race. Last year, Rutherford defeated Democratic challenger Donna Deegan, a former Jacksonville TV host and founder of the Donna Breast Cancer Marathon. The impact from Tropical Storm Elsa will meet Jacksonville around midnight to noon tomorrow. High temps today in the upper 80s.
NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, which aims to improve the quality of people's lives through grants supporting child well-being, the environment, medical research, and the performing arts, and the listeners who support this NPR station.
The pandemic is still with us as the Delta variant of COVID-19 is filling up ERs once again here in the city. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Hope you had a great 4th of July holiday. Just ahead, rising COVID cases in Florida have landed another local public official in the hospital. A closer look at what's going on with that variant. Give us a call. It's 549-2937. Then later, the public process of improving our riverfront, plus Jacksonville-based photographer Doug Eng. All of that and more ahead. But first this hour, the latest on the pandemic. Florida has reported 15,684 new COVID cases over the last week. That is a 35% increase. In Duval County, the positive test rate is at 11.1%. That is the highest proportion of positive tests of any major metro in the state. We're a hot spot. The state also added 213 new deaths from COVID. The death toll is closing in on the state to nearly 38,000 since the pandemic began. Now, at the same time, friends and family of Jacksonville City Council member Jacoby Pittman are asking for prayers this morning as she battles COVID-19. Our partner News for Jax learned Monday Ms. Pittman has been hospitalized and is in a local ICU. It's unclear how she contracted the virus or whether she had been vaccinated. With more on the surging COVID cases in our local ERs, we welcome back to the show Michelle Aquino, MD. She's a hospitalist at Baptist Health. Dr. Aquino, always good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
It's 549-2937 to join us. So tell us what the situation is like in your COVID ward this morning.
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, this is just based on numbers in the last 2 months, I'd say, two and a half months. our numbers are slowly increasing. So when everything, we were past the holidays and everything kind of settled down, our total numbers, and I'm talking about all 4 Baptist hospitals and Wolfson, we always include Wolfsons in our numbers. Our numbers were down to probably maybe low 30s in terms of people in the hospital with active COVID. Okay? I was on the COVID ward last week. I started last Monday. I was on for 7 days. When I started day 1, there were 70 active patients in all 5 hospitals. As of this morning, there are up to 100 active patients in all 5 hospitals. So in a span of 7 days, we've already increased by 30 people. So the bottom line is the numbers are going up.
Yeah,
and to put it in perspective, when we were at the peak, we were at about 170, 180 patients. And right now we're about at 100. So when you think of those numbers, right now in Jacksonville, we're not doing well.
No, we're not. We have the highest positive test rate of any county in the state, any large urban county.
Absolutely.
And so we've learned over the weekend that Jacoby Pittman is the latest member of the Jacksonville City Council to contract COVID. She's in a Baptist hospital as we speak, being treated, we're told, in serious condition.
That is very, very scary. I was listening to you. I'm not sure if she's, I think she is unvaccinated from what I understand.
Yes, I don't know but I don't know that to be true, but we will certainly try to find out. Now, let me ask you whether we don't know her status, but are most of the patients that are coming in now unvaccinated?
Absolutely. I would say 99.99% are all unvaccinated. Every single patient I saw last week that I took care of for COVID, everyone was unvaccinated. Everyone was unvaccinated. And I will share that every once in a while we'll have someone who is fully vaccinated that ends up positive, but these people are in the hospital for something non-COVID related, meaning they come in for something else. We treat them. We're getting ready to send them to a nursing home, and then we need a COVID test to okay them to send them to a nursing home. They've been in the hospital 4 or 5 days, and they end up turning positive. So they were there for non-COVID related issues.
Can you share with us how much of this is being driven by the Delta variant of COVID-19? It's highly infectious, and it is certainly seeming to strike the unvaccinated in large numbers. This just really drives home the message you've been saying all along, that people need to get vaccinated because they are at risk.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Delta, what we know about the Delta variant right now is, number one, it is highly, highly contagious. That's what we know. And put that in perspective. The initial COVID virus, when it started in the beginning of all this, if you had COVID, you would spread it to maybe 2 people, 2.5 people. The Delta variant, we think when you have that, you spread that much more. You spread it to about 5, 6, 7 people. So it just means that it's highly contagious, highly contagious. And luckily right now, if you are vaccinated, our vaccines are working against the Delta variant. So if you're vaccinated, you should not get an active COVID infection. So what does that mean? People that are unvaccinated, it's a smaller group, right? Mm-hmm. We figure about almost, where are we? In St. John's, we are at 40% vaccinated. So that means instead of, having 100% of the community for the Delta to infect, they're down to about 60% of that community that is unvaccinated. So listen, if you are unvaccinated, you need to be wearing a mask. You need to be socially distancing because Delta is here. It is passing around. It is, it is pervasive, and it is a bad virus. I got to tell you, it's a bad virus.
549-2937 as we speak with Dr. Michelle Aquino at Baptist Health. Brad at the Beaches. Go ahead, Brad.
Hi, good morning. My first comment or for the doctor, a question, is there any likelihood that vaccinated people are getting the virus, but their symptoms are so mild because they're vaccinated that they're actually able to spread it to unvaccinated people with the idea that they think they have a mild cold or they think they're battling allergies? And my second part question would be, I know currently on YouTube you're unable to discuss some treatments such as ivermectin. Has this doctor seen any support for ivermectin or support for things that are conversations that we probably can only have on your show, Melissa?
Yeah.
Because if you say them more broadly on these internet, they're taken down. And again, these are not conspiracy theorists. These
Okay,
are
Brad.
ICU
Yeah.
physicians and doctors.
Thank you for those two questions, Brad. Dr. Aquino, what about that?
Yeah, good question, Brad. Number one, if we are vaccinated, what we do know is even if you're exposed to COVID and let's say you're exposed to it, you have it and you can pass it on in theory. What we know is when you're vaccinated, that happens much less frequently, meaning your level of virus in your body is much, much less, which is a good thing. So yes, in theory, you can be exposed, have it, not be infected yourself, but pass it to someone else. That can happen, but it happens at a much lesser degree once you are vaccinated. So that's the first question. The second question, ivermectin. It's interesting. I saw a patient recently last week who outpatient, someone put them on this medication, which I found puzzling because we have no scientific evidence saying this helps. I will tell you right now, for COVID, if you are in the hospital, which means you need oxygen, that's usually who gets hospitalized for COVID because you're needing oxygenation. So if you're in the hospital and need oxygen, the only treatment we have, the only treatment we know helps, the only treatment we are doing is steroids. That is the only thing we are doing right now.
Really?
So a lot of these other things we've done in the past.
And why? Why is that all you're doing now?
Because it's the only thing that with science, we've been doing studies and showing, initially certain things we thought might help. And, later we're restudying it and finding out it really does not help. So there's, a few different things we tried in the beginning thinking it would be helpful, but ultimately they aren't.
Steroids.
So really, at the end of the day,
Interesting.
Yeah, steroids. That's the only thing we have right now that you're getting actively treated.
And oxygen, of course, if you need that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you're coming into the ER, that's why you're there. You need oxygen. Mark in Mark in St. Augustine. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, good morning. I wanted to ask your guest about her thoughts on, I guess it's a number that is associated with every test, and that's called the cycle threshold. My understanding is that kind of gives you an indication of how severe the COVID level may be in any given patient that tests positive. Back in December of last year, Ron DeSantis had said anybody that runs a test, LabCorp, Quest, what have you, needs to report the cycle threshold because in many instances, some people can test positive, but they have so little of the virus in them that they really aren't able to transmit it, much less be affected by it.
Okay. Mark, thanks for that. Doctor?
That's a great question. Here's the thing, Mark. There's a lot of things that in theory would be great if we can test for, regularly, but we don't. Okay, so that's one of those things that we do not test. And again, right now, we're talking about, as I think it was the caller Brad asked, about having being vaccinated and passing the virus on. Imagine how many people are right now vaccinated, are exposed to the virus, have it, and pass it on to someone else. They do not have any symptoms, the vaccinated patient. So how do we know to test them? So there's a lot of people that are walking around that this might happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're shedding a low level of virus or whatnot. But they don't have symptoms. They're not going to get tested. So that's the issue. If we were testing everyone every day, 100%, some of these questions would definitely be answered. So, we don't do that.
Here's a tweet from Perry. I just read that an Israeli study shows the Pfizer vaccine, which my whole family got 2 months ago, is only 64% effective against the Delta variant. Dr. Aquino, let's talk about this. We generally understand that getting vaccinated protects us against a severe form of the disease, prevents hospitalization and death. But what about this new study showing that with the new variant, some vaccines may not be quite as effective against this new strain? Your thoughts?
Okay, my thoughts. This is what is going to happen to all of us in the near future if we do not reach that herd immunity and get more people vaccinated. What I mean by that is, the pro-vaccine group, the science group, we keep saying you need to get vaccinated so we can slow the spread of this variant, these variants, slow the spread of this virus, hopefully wipe out this virus. And the longer we delay that, the longer the virus is going to be replicating. It's going to get, more versions of itself. I think we're talking about Delta right now. I think recently Lambda is now being found in certain communities. So these viruses are going to keep replicating and they're going to keep getting nastier as long as they have a place to, infect, as long as they have people to infect. So this is something that we're going to see. Eventually, our vaccines are not going to be efficacious against any of these vaccines that we have now. And ultimately, we're going to have to redo this whole vaccine process and start from the beginning. That,
Great.
unfortunately,
Great.
yes, isn't that great news? I hope everyone listening just has a better morning. But yeah, that's the issue with it. So when you see the
not to cut you off. Let's leave it at this. Your message, as always, is please get vaccinated, right?
Yes, I will say that. And the other thing is, if you are unvaccinated, whatever your reasons are, you need to be careful. You need to be careful. You're not careful. You're going to church. You're hanging out with other people that are unvaccinated. If you are not masking, you are not socially distancing, you will get COVID. We will see you in the hospital, and you never want that. It is scary being in the hospital. So please get vaccinated, and if not, be careful.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle Aquino. She's a hospitalist at Baptist Health. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Well, community conversations are continuing this summer about how best to develop Jacksonville's downtown riverfront. We are following along this process here on the show with monthly conversations of our own. This morning, a closer look at the public process. We're pleased to welcome Jen Andrews, CEO of Shelby Farms Park Conservancy. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
Good to have you. Also with us, Yvette Lopez Ledesma, Senior Director of Community-Led Conversation with the Wilderness Society. Yvette, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. And give us a call as we talk about the future of developments on the Jacksonville riverfront, 549-2937. Jen Andrews, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit first about Shelby Farms Park Conservancy.
Sure. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We work as part of what's called a public-private partnership. So while we are a private nonprofit, we are in a partnership with Shelby County government. The county owns the property that comprises Shelby Farms Park, which is a 4,500-acre public park in Memphis, Tennessee. It's right in the center of population density in the Mid-South. So about half the people live to the east of us, about half the people live to the west of us. It's an incredible opportunity for the city of Memphis, given the size and scale of the project. But the park languished for years due to disagreements over how the property should be used, lack of funding and resources.
Sounds familiar. It sounds very familiar.
I think it's a familiar story for many parts.
Yeah.
But the good news is it's a great one to point to because we have been able, through a really transformative public process, to create a truly world-class park in Memphis, Tennessee. And today it's enjoyed by more than 6 million people a year. We have beautiful world-class design facilities and amenities, and it's only going to get better.
So tell us about how that worked in Memphis. And when we talk about public process, that's the same thing that Jacksonville is trying to do right now, just getting community input on what should be done to develop our riverfront space. Tell us how it worked in Memphis.
You know, these processes are so complex, and each one is specific, I think, to the environment in which it's happening. For many years, the park project was stalled because people couldn't agree over what should or shouldn't happen in the park. Fortunately, around 2005 or 6, things sort of came together through some local political leadership. Groups were organized to come together, and not just groups that wanted to see development of the park, but also groups that had concerns about what was going to happen to the park. And fortunately, we were able to pull together a small nonprofit organization to kind of lead these conversations in partnership with the county, and we convinced the county to put a conservation easement on the property. We convinced the county to turn over daily management and operations of the park to a nonprofit organization as a partner. And then we developed a master plan with James Corner Field Operations out of New York as our planners. Throughout that process, we made public demonstrations in good faith to all of the people in Memphis and Shelby County that the public would have a voice. We positioned ourselves as promoting the public voice. We held meetings all over town in parts of the park where maybe people had never even been, parts of the city where maybe people had never even been to Shelby Farms Park before. We also held meetings with people who found the park to be beloved and were concerned about any changes that happened to the park, that it could damage it. So we spent more than a year just doing public input all over town at all stages of the project, including before anyone put pencil to paper to start designing what the park could be. We asked people about what their hopes and dreams for the property were, what their hopes and dreams for the city were, and how the park project could connect with that. And then, of course, you know, what their fears were as well about the development of the park.
You know, there was a guest column that ran in the Florida Times-Union on the 4th of July from the coalition of groups called Riverfront Parks Now. I'm going to quote from it. Downtown Jacksonville is at a crossroads, and we implore city leaders to recognize what is at stake. The last best chance to create a riverfront for all. Jacksonville should follow the leads of cities that have successfully combined signature riverfront parks, connected trails, and well-designed riverwalks to attract residents, visitors, events, and developer investment, while also providing protection from sea level rise and flooding. So, Yvette Lopez Ledesma with the Wilderness Society, you're a planner, you're a park advocate, you're a preservationist. Tell us a little bit about the importance of making sure there's public buy-in into these successful projects, and what are your thoughts about what we're hearing from this coalition, Riverfront Parks Now?
Sure, thank you. So, I mean, for public participation, I mean, not only would determine like the final project, but also just key in developing stewards for the project, and you know, that can't be underestimated, because they make sure that the people closest to the project can continue to support it and enjoy it. And so if you have projects that are more reflective of the places and the people, most importantly, where it's located, you're going to have more success with the project. I hear, you know, there's a lot of big collaborations happening in several cities, so it's no surprise that also in Jacksonville people are coming together around developing this waterfront project. And you know, people want to be heard. I think at the end of the day, I think, you know, calls like that are valid, and bring, you know, more success to the projects. I think one of the things that happens often in public processes is that people are left out. Sometimes agencies, you know, don't make a strong enough effort to bring everyone together. And you know, we're still working sometimes under that like bringing people to the table sort of thing, but it's really about the agency going out to the tables that already exist, not necessarily the folks coming to the quote unquote table. So yeah, I think it's great to know that there are that many that there's a large coalition that's really invested in participating and seeing that the city does something for that project.
We're talking about the public process for developing Jacksonville's riverfront. Give us a call, 549-2937. Well, Yvette, you've been involved in these public space, public park projects all over the country in large cities like LA and Seattle. Here in Jacksonville, there are so many groups and stakeholders vying for a voice and a say in how this all comes out, and so many different players, and they're not all on the same page. And we've seen a million different artist renderings of how things should look. Different developers have put forth ideas. We've got the city's downtown development, or downtown investment authority, I should say, the DIA. We've got this coalition, Riverfront Parks Now. We've got Shad Khan, who's working to develop a piece of the riverfront himself, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It seems kind of chaotic right now. Maybe there is a method to the madness, but how do you see all of this shaking out based on what you've seen happen in other cities where you've been involved in this kind of process?
It takes a lot of time. I think lots of times agencies are they're on a timeline to complete the public outreach process and engage people in these conversations. And in that process, they may start leaning towards only like either the most vocal or the most, I don't know, who they have already maybe established trust with. And that trust building isn't really thought of as like something that agencies need to do and really spend a lot of time in. Public outreach, unfortunately still continues to be treated kind of like this checkbox in terms of planning projects. And while it's great that the artists and the designers and the planners have their visions and their renderings, they need to ask themselves how much of that reflects the community. What did the community were they able to weigh in and like build consensus around even a feature, like starting with a certain feature of the project. But that takes time, and I think there needs to be a real recognition of that. And also other things, also like language access. How many people are even able to participate in the process? Even here where I'm in Los Angeles, there's over 180 languages spoken. But yet we're lucky to see efforts that go beyond English to Spanish translation, but there are so many other rich cultures and communities speaking various languages and dialects that, agencies really have to do their homework before they start these processes and give themselves a lot of time for this engagement, peace, and trust building.
Let's go back to Jen Andrews in Memphis. What were the biggest mistakes made in Memphis that we can learn from here in Jacksonville?
Early on in the project, there was a group that tried to do what we were eventually successful in doing, which was the public-private partnership for Shelby Farms Park. And we had the benefit of learning from some mistakes that they identified, the primary one being attempting to get the project going without a conservation easement for the property, protecting the property for the long-term future. They were able to realize afterwards was the most important thing that we could do. In fact, everything that we did afterward really is about protecting the property. A thriving organization that can steward the property for long term, a compelling vision that reflected the hopes and dreams and needs of Memphis. Everything that we did was really built on the foundation of protecting the land. That also built trust and credibility for what we were trying to do ultimately with the design project. I think another opportunity, if I were to go back in time and do it again, we were so willing to take on the burden of all of the work that needed to happen moving forward, because I think we felt that was the political reality at the time. I think we would have fought a little harder to make sure that the public element, being, the county or city or whatever municipality is involved in these projects, that they had more skin in the game, that they were bringing more resources to the table. That was not the political reality we were dealing with at that time, and we've been able to go back and fix that in renegotiations with our contracts. But we think it's really important that these municipalities don't just turn over operations to a private partner, but that it be a true partnership with both partners bringing resources, ideas, vision to the process.
I'm looking at the Shelby Farms Park Conservancy website. You have more than 40 miles of trails. You have a trail network that includes the Shelby Farms Green Line. That's a paved cycling and pedestrian trail that connects the city to the park. More than 20 bodies of water, even a herd of buffalo. you have a lot of attractions. I'm sure it's an economic driver. And as you may know, we are trying to build a green line in Jacksonville. It will be called the Emerald Trail, a green belt for cycling and pedestrians that will go all around the city and will ideally connect to what we do on the riverfront. How important is the green belt to the overall vision, do you think?
I think it's critical. I mean, we've invested about $70 million just in capital projects and improvements at the park in the last decade. And we've built and designed a lot of beautiful world-class things, but there's maybe nothing more transformative that we've done other than pave a 10-foot wide flat strip of asphalt through the city of Memphis. This trail connects the park, which is sort of on the eastern edge of the city, straight into Midtown Memphis. And when that project was announced, there was some cynicism about the city's ability to do it, to get it done. We were committed to getting it done. We did get it done. And I could feel a real difference in the mood of the city in terms of people being willing to be optimistic about what we could do in the public realm. This one flat stretch of asphalt on a former rail line has really transformed the city. It's connected neighborhoods that would otherwise never have connected to one another. It's provided a route for alternative transportation, and it's also given Memphians something to celebrate. Everybody loves it. People always say, everyone loves the Green Line and the Grizzlies. Those are things that all Memphians can unite around.
That's great.
I think that the Greenbelt project could be one of the most transformative public realm projects in the city.
So, Yvette, what about that? Our Emerald Trail is going to get some public funding, which is a big win for Groundwork Jacksonville, which is leading on this project. It's been envisioned as a real game changer for Jacksonville, and it sounds as though in other cities that's been the effect.
Oh yeah, definitely. These big green projects, linear parks that sort of connect, in this sort of necklace fashion. There are plans for those, many here in Los Angeles when it comes to our Los Angeles River. Prior to working at the Wilderness Society, I worked with an organization called Pacoima Beautiful, and Pacoima Beautiful has a what's called their Pacoima Wash Vision Plan, which takes a what is a flood control channel. Back in the day when the area would flood and actually get water, it's kind of in drought mode, been in drought mode for a long time, but there's a lot of space around these flood control channels, and the community of Pacoima, the neighborhood of Pacoima, is also very kind of on the fringes of the city of Los Angeles. So there's a lot of excitement around it because people also see that people in the neighborhood see it as an opportunity to connect to a bikeway that or a walking path that will connect you with the rest of the river and also just with the rest of the city. It can really provide options for people to have a greater range of mobility, but also have greater opportunities to recreate, and I think that is exciting as well. So I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about these sort of projects all over the place, and I think like in a place like Jacksonville, this definitely has that opportunity to connect people and bring them together. So that's exciting.
And let's get both of your final thoughts now. What's the one piece of advice you want to leave planners with as they try to navigate all of this? Yvette?
I'd say the one piece of advice is that engagement, it doesn't stop even at the completion of the project. You got to go beyond. So make sure you take your time to do it on the front end and throughout the process, but also stick around. Stick around and stay
engaged,
stay invested, and stay a friend.
And Jen,
sometimes people think about our public realm, our parks, as a luxury or nice to have or icing on the cake, and I really feel that smart cities understand that designing 21st century public parks can be done in a way that solves real 21st century problems. And I think if it can be communicated that way as well, then you can really help another segment of the public get excited and get involved and understand why these parks are so important for local economies, for our environment, for health and wellness, for equity, for social bonding, really critical public issues.
I want to thank you both so much. Jen Andrews, CEO of Shelby Farms Park Conservancy in Memphis. And on the line from LA, Yvette Lopez Ledesma, Senior Director of Community-Led Conservation with the Wilderness Society. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Later in the hour, the work of photographer Doug Eng. But up next.
Different parts of a city even can be experiencing really different heat because of urban planning and urban design things like trees and tree canopy and shade cover.
Why shade isn't a protection from extreme heat in every neighborhood. We'll be right back. Well, National Geographic magazine's July cover story is called A Shady Divide, and it explores a low-tech, easy solution to extreme heat. Shade. Seems like common sense, right? This in-depth look focuses on the city of Los Angeles to illustrate a phenomenon found in cities across the U.S., including Jacksonville. There's a real divide between rich and poor when it comes to life-saving shade on a warming planet. I learned more about the importance of shade and why poor neighborhoods don't get enough of it from the author of the piece, climate scientist Alejandra Barunda. Take a listen. Alejandra, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So you're writing about a really low-tech solution to extreme heat, shade. It seems like common sense. And certainly people in hot cities right now are seeking shade. But tell us a little bit more about your research. You focus on the city of Los Angeles for this whole examination, correct?
Yeah, but this is an issue and a problem that exists in cities across the United States, from Los Angeles to Chicago to Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing that almost every city, I think, is thinking about and facing at this point.
Certainly here in Florida, we are too. So extreme heat in the Pacific Northwest right now is absolutely excruciating, and it's not a part of the country that's used to that. Extreme heat increases the risk of death, and cities around America this summer are bracing for this. And a lack of tree cover in low-income areas can exacerbate the problem. Tell us more about your research on this.
Yeah, I think you make a really good and important point there. Extreme heat is actually the most deadly kind of natural disaster we face every year in the U.S. It has huge public health impacts, and as we're seeing right now, it's just an incredibly dangerous thing for people to live through. And one of the things that we found and that researchers have really clearly documented at this point is that different parts of a city even can be experiencing really different heat during the same event. And a lot of that is because of urban planning and urban design things like trees and tree canopy and shade cover. And those design aspects, like just the trees themselves, are distributed really unequally throughout many cities in the U.S., and that can end up having big impacts on the heat. So some neighborhoods in Portland, for example, there's actually one of the biggest disparities between rich, often whiter neighborhoods and neighborhoods that were formerly redlined. And temperatures can be more than 10 degrees different in those two different kinds of
More than 10 degrees. You know, you often hear when someone's describing a part of a city, they'll say a leafy suburb or the tree-lined streets of such and such a place. And it's typically a white middle to upper middle class community in the suburbs. And we've gotten used to this idea that the outlying areas are where all the trees are. Can you talk a little bit about the history of redlining in cities and how that has affected this shade deficit?
Yeah, so redlining, what we kind of colloquially refer to as redlining now, were these policies that were put into place starting in the 1930s by the federal government in which they literally drew red lines around some neighborhoods and green lines around others, and used those maps to decide where and how to grant federally backed housing loans. And what this ended up doing was making the areas that were redlined, which were most often inhabited by Black and brown people, put into this cycle of disinvestment. So money flowed to the communities that were graded A and outlined in green, and money was withheld in many cases from the redlined areas. And it's not just these policies, of course. There's been many other things that have happened since then. But redlining and other policies like that really kicked off this cycle of disinvestment in a lot of neighborhoods around the country. And one of the clearest ways you can see that is in the tree canopy. Trees aren't necessarily expensive. They're not a really high-tech thing, but they take a lot of money to plant and to take care of. And when you see a place that doesn't have a lot of trees, to me that signals that place has not been invested in the same way as, for instance, those leafy suburbs you were talking about.
Yeah. You know, here in Jacksonville, Florida, we have Greenscape of Jacksonville. Their whole mission is to maintain and increase what is, frankly, a really lush tree canopy for a lot of this city. We're luckier than a lot of cities. But that said, in your research, you find that there are certain types of shade that are better than others. Is that right? There are different kinds of shade?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the shade itself is just, something that keeps you out of the direct sunlight, which is often what is really hard for bodies to deal with, and what makes kind of extreme heat even more dangerous in a lot of cases. Trees are one of the, kind of the most intuitive ways that we think about finding and getting and creating shade. But there's a lot of other things that you can do. If you go to older cities in the Middle East, for example, you can see all of these architectural interventions and building designs that incorporate shade and make it a much more natural part of the built landscape. And so in Los Angeles, for example, because the city is thinking really hard about how to get more shade to people, they're putting in a lot more shaded bus shelters, for example, and figuring out where to put shade sails and other things that you can actually just build to help people cool down in hot times like we're having right now.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And, across the country, there's just been a real effort to increase the tree canopy, an urban canopy to help cool a city. You see a tree canopy as infrastructure as important as a sewer system or a street grid. Yes?
Yeah, I really love that framing. I think it's such a valuable thing to think about. Like, one of the things that became really clear when we were doing the reporting for the story was that trees are really a part of the built infrastructure, like you were saying. And so one of the things that kind of led to their appearance in Los Angeles over the years was this prioritization of car culture. And so as streets got widened and parking spaces got added, trees in many cases got taken out. And now, as we think about how we want our cities to look and feel in a climate changed future and in a climate changed present, thinking about what we want our infrastructure to do is really important. And if we want it to be about people outside living in these outdoor spaces, that's one thing, and that tells us to have more trees and shade as opposed to more, for example, car infrastructure.
Right. Well, I encourage everyone to read your work. It's the July cover story in National Geographic, A Shady Divide. Writer, climate scientist Alejandra Barunda. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
When President Trump told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, it was a sign of how politically relevant the group had become. Rolling Stone staff writer E.J. Dixon joins us to talk about the far-right organization's influence, growth, and future plans to run for local office. That's next time on Think. Tonight at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Carol Hills from The World. Each day, our program gives you a chance to step outside our borders, to hear what's going on around the planet, and to hear how events in America are seen across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Our producers and reporters dig deep to find stories that connect you with what's happening worldwide. That's why we call it The World. Join us.
This afternoon at 3, here on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Jane Clayson. For her best-selling young adult mystery novel Firekeeper's Daughter, author Angeline Bully tapped her Native American roots and reveals there's joy as well as hardship on the reservation.
I just wanted to show the fullness of my community and that we are not just our traumas.
That's next time on Here and Now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
When Dessa's not singing, writing, and rapping, she's keeping super busy with a new show on the BBC, an upcoming drama, and releasing music named after the host of Fresh Air. We meet Dessa, and America's first female black economist. Why does Sadie Alexander's work still resonate 100 years after receiving her PhD? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, local photographer Doug Eng will soon be featured in his solo exhibition exploring the relationship between man and nature at MoCA Jacksonville. This retrospective is titled Structure of Nature, Nature of Structure, and it will be on view beginning this Friday. Ilva Rouse, senior curator at MoCA, is on the line with more. Hey, Ilva, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa.
Great to talk to you. So this features Doug Eng, a local talent, exploring our natural and urban landscapes. Tell us about the exhibit.
So we are delighted to have Doug Eng, as you said, a local photographer who has become known for his advocacy and beautiful projects related to the Florida nature. And we have been working together with him on a retrospective exhibition, so it covers bodies of work from his trajectory, such as Streaming South, My Real Florida, and his most recent project, which was around the drowned forest of the Ocklawaha.
Right. And Eng does work that really documents our natural world. He has unique imagery. He focuses on meaningful public projects. And he also does work that helps us understand more about endangered wetlands and creeks, the effects of climate change on the health of our ecosystem. So this is more than art. It's also an environmental exhibit, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So what I think Doug does so beautifully is his work is very personal, because the love that he has for our nature comes through. And I think what he tries to do is to raise our consciousness of the preciousness of it and of the need to care for it through a personal lens. He says himself that he doesn't consider himself an activist. What he wants to transmit is that love for our environment.
And I apologize for the beeping sound. Let me ask you as well, Ilva, about everything that's going on at MoCA and in local museums, as museums really have fully opened back up to the public after more than a year of pandemic. It's exciting, challenging, but your doors are open.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't tell you how good it feels to have bodies in the museum again. We are fully open, regular hours, Tuesday through Sunday, and wonderful exhibits such as Dogs that open Friday, and slowly but surely, masks are recommended but not required.
And more at your website. Check it out, Doug Eng. We're going to have to leave it there because we're getting some sound interference. Ilva Rouse, Senior Curator at MoCA Jax. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Always.
Thank you so much. Again, check it out online and check out the public programs that are taking place all through the summer and fall at MoCA. All kinds of stuff happening at all of the museums around town. So check them out and, get out there, keep masking up, but get out there and support our local arts and culture institutions. You can also support another art and culture institution. That's us at WJCT Public Media. Check it out at our website. All the news that's fit to print and a lot of other interesting notes from the world of arts and culture, always at WJCT.org. And by the way, museums aren't the only places opening back up to the public. Our building is open back up to the public. We're doing events here again at WJCT safely, carefully, after a long hiatus, as everyone else has experienced. So that's something else for you to think about, too. We are back open to the public, and we are welcoming people back. And hope you had a great listen to the show this morning. Thanks for listening. Our producer is Heather Schatz. Josh Torres is our director. Our editorial director is Jessica Palumbo. Bill Bortsfield is our digital editor. We value your feedback. Keep those emails coming. Send them to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed any part of today's show, catch our podcast up later today, wherever you like to listen on all platforms. You can also listen to this show, the Florida Roundup, which I host across the state every Friday, and a lot of other content through the WJCT app. Download the WJCT app today and start listening and watching our content right through the app. And by the way, let me make another quick plug for JME, the Jacksonville Music Experience. That is our multi-platform music station. More at WJCT.org/JaxMusic there. I'm Melissa Ross. This is First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. We'll be back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.